Christmas is a thing that exists. It rolls around every year and doesn't shy away from a bit of trivial controversy now and again. Pokemon is also a thing that exists and comes with its fair share of drama too. These two things have never really been strongly associated, so it can be tricky for creators like myself to think of a Christmas themed Pokemon video to cook in the oven. But there was one time when the pair overlapped, creating a perfect storm that caused an entire group of Nintendo fans to collectively lose their marbles. This is the story of how a Pokemon app ruined Christmas. Now, what type of application could Pokemon possibly construct that would cause such an effect? Last time I checked, they'd never released a Pokemon Grinch version. To answer that question, we need to take a cheeky time travel back to October 2013, when Game Freak were adding finishing touches to a product that would define the 3D era of Pokemon.
Pokemon Bank.
Pokemon Bank.
Pokemon Bank.
Pokemon Bank.
A storage system released on the Nintendo eShop that would let players transfer Pokemon from any mainline 3DS game to an online server. Upon release, this would only include Pokemon X and Y, but the app would eventually fully support both the 6th and 7th generations of Pokemon. This system, closely resembled Pokemon's traditional method of storage, the PC box, and would have a maximum capacity of 3,000 Pokemon. Accidentally wasted so much of your time that you have too many shiny Pokemon to keep on your game? Well, now you have a convenient way to keep them in exile forever. However, fans weren't entirely engaged in what Bank had to offer on its own. What is this, Pokemon Box 2? Instead, they firmly fixed their eyes on the much more exciting Poké Transporter. This secondary app let you transfer Pokemon from older generations into the bank, allowing these former sprites access into the realm of 3D models and extreme desaturation. Wait, so you're telling me if I transfer my Blaziken from Pokemon Emerald to Platinum, and then from Pokemon Platinum to White 2, and then use the Poké Transporter app, that same Blaziken can Mega Evolve in X and Y? Correct! It will definitely have less stats than a random Torchic you get on Wonder Trade, but you could do it. Now, unfortunately, the cost of Pokemon Bank wasn't free, with the app charging $5 a year for use of its services. Good news was that everyone would be given a month's free trial, allowing you to onboard all your Pokemon for no cost. Users would also receive a free Celebi if they logged on during this period. And who doesn't appreciate a free onion every now and again? The bad news was that after this month ended, they were essentially holding any Pokemon you had stored in there hostage. I know it might seem a bit meaningless to give you all this background context, but I feel like it's necessary not to understate just how much of a leap this was for Pokemon at the time. X and Y had only been out for a month, so 3D Pokemon was still considered quite the novelty, and many of us were still adjusting to this new era of Pokemon. There were many other reasons for these apps' significance, such as the effect an influx of old Pokemon would have on the Wi-Fi battling scene, but for some fans, just being able to see and interact with the members of their original team from years in the past was enough to entice them to the bank. In the short window between announcement and release, Pokemon Bank and Poké Transporter quickly became some of the most anticipated releases in Pokemon's history. And what was the release date, you ask? 25th of December 2013. Only in Japan though. Us Westerners would have to wait 2 days later on the 27th. Still, it's in my opinion that the festive fever and the build up to release greatly contributed to the soaring hype around the app. I mean, I remember being more hyped for Bank coming out than whatever presents I was getting that year. But unfortunately, as people around the world got into bed on Christmas Eve, what lay in store the next day would hardly be festive.
Happy Christmas!
Christmas Day 2013 arrives, and Pokemon Bank is released into the wild. Japanese players who are also firm Santa deniers are willing to forfeit this year's presents in exchange for downloading the app before anyone else. Initially, Bank, Transporter, and the eShop were all working fine. Thanks to that free trial, no time had to be wasted plugging in payment information into your 3DS. So Pokemon from the Hoenn, Sinnoh, Sinnoh, and Unova regions descended onto the shores of Kalos quite quickly. But as more and more people began waking up and downloading the app, this smoothness would be short-lived. People began experiencing errors logging onto the eShop, errors downloading the app. Want to create a Nintendo Network account? Have an error message instead. It appeared the level of hype forged by the community was proving too much for Nintendo hardware to handle. Now by December 2013, Pokemon X and Y had sold 11.61 million copies. It's fair to assume the majority of buyers probably owned another Pokemon game that they wanted to transfer their guys over from. Therefore, I don't think it's far-fetched to assume there could have been at least 1 million people all trying to download Pokemon Bank at the same time. And whenever these guys were rejected access, they'd simply try again. Error messages kept increasing in frequency until finally, total collapse. Within hours of Pokemon Bank's release, Nintendo support had been forced to release a statement. Unforeseen traffic levels on their servers had not only crashed Pokemon Bank's servers, but the entire Nintendo network along with it too. The crash would render both the 3DS and Wii U eShop inaccessible for 3 days, cruelly forcing Nintendo fans to undergo social interaction over the holiday period. Now remember, Bank was supposed to release in the West on the 27th of December, so there was quite a lot of hope in the Western community that this was only a minor hiccup.
3 days later.
Hey, where's the download button, guys? And what do the words TBD by the release date mean? That's right, Pokemon Bank only lasted a couple hours before being hit with an indefinite postponement. Now it's unclear why Pokemon dared to release such a hyped product on a day that's famous for people receiving hyped products. I guess the higher ups thought that people would be too busy spending time with their families, but I suppose not. But what I do know for certain is that Nintendo probably threatened to replace all of Pokemon's promotions with Digimon if they blew up their servers again. And I mean, looking back, we should have probably expected something like this to happen. It's key to remember that back in 2013, mass downloads like this were still a relatively new concept in the video game world, especially for Nintendo. That's not to say Pokemon fans didn't have a right to be annoyed in the moment, I definitely was too, but as always, some people took it a little bit too far.
Why do they delay Pokemon Bank? Why, Japan? They do this to us every damn time. They overload the system, and America and Europe will not get it until to be determined. Now it's to be decided now. Thanks a lot, Japan.
Hey man, so what are your Boxing Day plans? I think I'm gonna stand with my camera 3.6mm away from my monitor and blame the Japanese. Sounds good! We even got a little musical number out of it.
We want the Pokemon Bank, you're making us frown. Was in the eShop, then you just took it down.
So how does this story end? Well, shortly after the eShop came back online, Pokemon Bank was removed from every region's store. However, those lucky few who had managed to download the app could still access all of its services once normal Nintendo Network activity resumed. It would later be announced that to prevent history repeating itself, Bank would be gradually rolled out region by region. On the 21st of January 2014, the app re-released in, quote, certain Asian countries, very specific, before making its way to Europe on February 4th and the Americas on February 5th. Pokemon Bank will remain available for download until the 27th of March 2013, when the 3DS eShop closed its doors for good.